This is season 10, and this season we're focusing on the people who make data work, the data professionals shaping how business is run. From data engineers and scientists to stewards, analysts, and architects, these roles don't work in silos. They collaborate, balancing trust, governance, scale, and speed to turn raw data into real impact. Because data professionals aren't just supporting the business, they're driving it forward. This season, we'll explore how ideas become impact, the decisions, the day-to-day realities, and the challenges of building data-driven organizations. This is Let's Talk Data. Let's talk about the work that makes data matter.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of SAP Let's Talk Data. My name is Corrie Birkeness. I'm from SAP Product Marketing, and I'm going to be your host for today's podcast. Today, we're going to be focusing on how to truly become a data-driven organization. We're going to talk about the art of data strategy. And to that end, we have a very special guest, Shelly McQuigg. Shelly specializes in data strategy and data platforms, and her focus has been on architecture, KPIs, and analytical success for those actionable insights. And joining Shelly is Kara Reed. Kara is a product marketing director for data and AI at SAP. And she's joining to chime into the discussion. She really brings a wealth of information and customer experience in the technology space. So welcome, Shelly and Kara.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so Shelly, let's just start by discussing a bit more about yourself, your experience. Tell us a little bit about your story. Give us the outline.
Sure. I grew up in the U.S. and I started university for the first 3 or 4 weeks in computer science. I didn't like the classes and I didn't like the people that were around me as cohorts. So I changed majors, didn't know what to do. And the dean of finance was doing a mentoring session. I went in and talked to him and he said, "Why don't you try finance?" He said, "There's a lot of computer work in finance." And I said, "Great, I will do that." So I came out of university with a degree in finance and immediately went to work for a large company, and all of the financial work was in systems. And I still really liked systems, and I liked technology, and I liked data. And so I immediately became the super user for all new systems and testing and building new reports, things like that came out. And that's how I started my career, really, as a finance super user, putting together different spreadsheets back when there were one page on a screen. There was no flipping back and forth. There was no multiple pages. And became a little more interested in the data side of it as well, when in finance, all the data has to be correct, has to be accurate, has to really tell the story.
Awesome. Being that super user, were you just bombarded with people asking you questions? Help me with this, help me with that. I mean, how does that feel?
Absolutely, it was that. And it was even more to, can you hop over for a few minutes, which turned into a few hours or a few days, and train our teams? How do we get better at using data? How do we get better at using the systems? How do we start building? Back then, it was charts and graphs in Excel. How do we build a chart in Excel that actually shows what's going on with different parts of different functions in different businesses? And it kind of grew from there. I went from a finance role to another finance role. Then I spent some time in marketing, doing some analysis in marketing. And then I was hired, which was my first formal role, as the data and analytics leader at Honeywell for the finance group.
So, Kara, similar path, or how did your journey to data and AI? How did that go?
It's funny, Shelly, that you mentioned, your path in college. Mine is semi-similar. So at university, I knew I wanted to be a business major, but I didn't know what I wanted my focus to be. Did I want it to be sales, marketing, supply chain, etc.? And then my sophomore year, they were doing presentations on all the options. And the business information systems major, which was, and I think its second year existing, promised me a job after graduation with a great starting salary. And so I was like, sold, I'm in. And honestly, that's how I got to into the world of data and analytics, because it was within that major that I took classes on databases, on application development. We had classes in SAP, et cetera. And so that is really what led me down this path, and where I kind of got the interest in the data and analytics space. Yeah, and then so while I was in university, I had my first internship. And in there, I was a business analyst, which of course is a very generic title. But one of my tasks was actually cleaning up the customer master for this organization. Me, as a 19-year-old intern who got paid by the hour, was the one responsible for figuring out which records were good, bad, which ones needed to be merged, which were duplicates, etc. And it was really there when I realized there has to be a better way. There has to be systems or better processes that can really help organizations with data. And that's ultimately what led me to my career in data and analytics.
I can build, actually, Kara, that's something I had as well. And that's actually why I was hired for the finance role when I went to Honeywell, was because they had master data all over the place. They had currency exchange rates all over the place. All the different countries had different P&Ls. They all had different ways of reporting metrics. And my very first project was to go in and figure out who was reporting why, create a corporate standard, and then put together a project plan with IT in partnership with them to get everybody into one standard. And I found that the numbers were pretty easy, because numbers tend to be black or white. You can argue what's in and what's out. But getting everybody to one set of terminology for something as simple as a P&L was not as easy as it sounds. So it wasn't a customer master, but it was still pretty tricky.
So thank you for sharing the stories, Kara and Shelly. I mean, really, everyone has like this unique path on how they get into data, especially in the earlier days. I mean, right now, right? It's like AI makes data so important because of the importance it plays in creating truth, right? But yeah, we all got that path to understanding and loving and becoming kind of data geeks because we knew the importance of that data quality, that trusted data, consistent data, early on,
Yeah.
and grew the careers from there, right?
Well, and I also think just having that hands-on experience leads to a strong leadership in the data world, because you understand, someone may look at that problem, Shelly, and say, oh, P&L, of course that everyone speaks the same language. But behind the scenes, there's 20 different definitions for each of these, attributes in it. And so having that knowledge, to not just the technology knowledge, but the business process knowledge, really helps bring the two together to guide an organization down the path of having proper data governance.
Often I'm asked, what does it take to be a good data leader? What do you need to do to be able to lead the data? And I think, Kara, to build on what you were saying, it's having the business knowledge and then also the technical skills. Technical skills are easier to hire and bring in than business knowledge. So what I always do when I work with analysts anywhere in any organization is I try to teach them business knowledge. Because with the business knowledge, I think you understand a lot more about what you're building and why you're building, and it gives you the leverage to ask more questions. So invariably for all of my teams, the business knowledge that you brought up was always very high on their development list. And I think, at least they've told me, they've all become much better analysts by learning not just how to move numbers around or how to move data around, but by why they're moving it around and what they're trying to do with it.
Yeah, and I also think that's crucial when you're looking to for companies that maybe don't have a strong data governance process or leadership process, because I hear so often that companies are immature in their data governance processes because the business views it as too rigid. We need to be able to have the flexibility to do what we need to do, and they see any process or governance as a black or white, yes or no. And so being able to speak to the business and essentially sell them on why this is going to make your life easier, even though you think it's going to make your life harder, is really a key to having a successful governance process and ultimately, good quality data within your business.
Yeah, and I love the direction we're going here. So, the whole idea of business knowledge, and LOB goals. Shelly, when we kind of look a little wider at the idea of data and analytics strategy, right? How important is it to start with the business and the business outcomes and goals before you kind of, as Kara says, governance, it's like, one governance policy to rule them all. How important it is to start with that business outcome, to develop that business strategy with the LOBs, the different lines of businesses involved. Kind of give us how do we start? How do we start a data strategy?
Yeah, that's a perfect opening for me, because we all know that companies are here to make money. That's at the end of the day, that's what companies are here to do. And companies tend to spend their money, generally speaking, in my opinion, for one or two things: to grow their revenue and or reduce cost. So if you want to start with a good data strategy, I always start with looking at a business focus or a business need. And often for companies that are just starting this journey, it's as easy as, what are our corporate KPIs? Who are the business owners that are responsible for them? And then how are we going to measure those? And to start with a data strategy, if you have a clear goal of all of the company marching to one set of KPIs and to one set of measurements, it helps focus on the overall strategy of the company. Each KPI should have a business owner or a process owner that helps define it, with the data strategist or the data leader helping manage those conversations so that everybody keeps going down a singular path to get to one source of truth for the business. Once the first data strategy is organized, which is get to those set of KPIs and or measurements, then I feel it's a bit like a pyramid. If you start with the corporate KPIs, let's go with the basic ones that exist in the world today, revenue and profit. Well, then what do you need to know under your revenue number to know if you're doing good or bad? Is it geographic? Is it product line? Is it brand based? For your cost analysis, are you better manufacturing? You're better buying in? Where are your people cost high? Where are your people cost low? How are your marketing cost? So when you start with a pyramid, you start with the overall KPIs of the company, and then you go down into those. In my opinion, there are very few companies that have completely built out their data strategy along with the governance needed to be able to go all the way down that pyramid and answer questions in detail and accurately.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it's because they try to do it all. If the goal is to reduce costs, increase profitability, right? Looking at, okay, now we're going to focus on the areas that are where we have the least amount of profit or the highest cost centers. And let's just say it's because I'm in marketing. Let's say it's marketing. Then focusing on the data sets, the core data domains that support, reporting on profitability and marketing, and putting your governance layer, a data strategy around those key core data sets versus trying to do it all. So yeah, create your goal and then get to the critical data assets and attributes that you need to govern, and start there. Start small and build out to a wider data strategy. I think sometimes that's the other problem, Shelly, is that they try to bite off everything instead of focusing on what matters the most. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about roles. Actually, I'm hoping you can, and Kara, I have a follow-up question for you on this too, but I'm hoping you can tell us about kind of the different levels, like executive sponsorship, leadership team, maybe let's say a governance board, data strategy board. Who are the influencers? Who are the executors? Give me a little sense of okay, if you're serious about creating a data strategy to improve business outcomes, what does the people organization look like?
Oh, that's always a loaded question, because you want your people organization to be 10, 20, 30 people, whatever your budget will allow, so you can go try to boil the ocean. I'd say the number one driver of a data strategy has got to be a very strong advocate in the C-suite. You have to have an advocate in the C-suite, even better if it's the CEO himself, saying the data doesn't make sense, The data is not working for me. What is our data strategy? How are we going to use our data better, make money with our data, save costs with our data, et cetera. So my number one is the advocate or the sponsor of the data strategy. Number two, you have to have a data and analytics leader that is responsible for that strategy. And if you do it well, I don't think that's a side of the desk job. It was, it's been full-time for me for many, many years, and I still only was able to do, half or 75% on a good year of everything that I wanted to do, because there's so many topics that touch data. And is the data accurate? Is it correct? What do the transformations in data look like? So I think you need a really good strategist. The other thing is a really good technology partner, fairly high up in the IT or technology group. Someone who can work with the data strategist and figure out the best kind of technologies that are going to meet the need of that company. Because I don't think one person can do it all. I do think it's a team effort. So if you have your sponsor, you have a data strategist, and then you have a really strong technical voice at the table, to me, that gets you started where you're actually capable to go to the business and then start looking for business leaders in the different functions, areas, brands, businesses, to help put that strategy together under the guidance of the 3 core team members.
This is a perfect transition to you, Kara. So we've been very focused on data professionals and practitioners this year, just understanding and supporting them. This has been our focus, right? So now I want you to kind of come at that level. So how do you see those data professionals as being influencers, executors, supporters of a company's data strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say, first of all, they have to walk the talk. When I was working with a lot of customers, whether it was implementations or solution demos, one of the questions I always got was, how do I export this to Excel? No matter who I was talking to. And so actually walking the talk and using the data and the tools provided to them is step one. And then finding those gaps where they need better tools or different tools, not just finding workarounds that work to get their specific task done, because that's what a lot of the folks in the business do as well. And then if we have, everyone across the organization doing that, then suddenly we have thousands of copies of spreadsheets with inaccurate data. So that's number one. I would also say from a influence perspective, the data practitioners are the kind of the first line of defense. They're the ones working with the data day in and day out. And so they have a strong voice when it comes to, or they should have a strong voice, let me say, when it comes to what technology do they need to do their job better. But they can't live in a silo and in their own isolated job, because they have to remember that the work they're doing is to Shelly's point, to either make the company more money or save the company money. And so while there may be one specific technology that knocks it out of the park for their job, if it doesn't align with the ecosystem that the company has already invested in, then it's not going to lead to the ultimate goals of the organization. So working with the technology partners, but also with the data strategists to show how these new solutions or data architecture recommendations will fit into the overall landscape of the organization, of the department, to help better those goals. That's really how you lead with influence. Because again, back to what Shelly brought up, if I'm just trying to pitch a new solution because it's going to run my queries faster, that's not going to, in a silo, that's not going to improve and help the business sell more or, help them save money. You have to tie everything back to what this is going to do for the overall organization to help them, grow.
I've got a good story to follow that up, Kara. When I left Residio, I went with a spinoff called Residio, which was the Honeywell Homes business. And the first CEO we had after spinoff, one of the best things he ever did for the entire data analytics, and we were a full SAP house, was I'm only discussing numbers that come out on the official dashboard, and I'm only discussing metrics that come out on the official dashboard. And that was the biggest single item, as you mentioned first, is there was no exporting to Excel. There was no adjusting the numbers. Everybody had to read from exactly that one dashboard. And that made a step change in the data and analytics organization.
I mean, that goes right back to walking the talk. That's a leader that understands the value of it. And that top-down alignment, I'm sure, helped the programs go further than they would otherwise.
And I like what you say about walking the talk, because that was something else with the analyst. In my experience, analysts that have a business partner they walk hand in hand or sit side by side with makes both the analytics easier to do and better understandable. And it also helps the business partner understand the value of the data and the analytics that come out of the team.
Yeah, I would always talk with organizations about, and this was both at the C level and also at the data practitioner level. No one technology is going to solve your problems. No one process is going to solve your problem, nor is the right person. But when you bring those three things together, that is when you can actually make a change.
Yeah, it's like the orchestration, right, of data and analytics. Shelly, I'm interested in some examples of where you saw data and in the data analytics space where you felt you were leading edge.
Leading edge. Let me think about that one. Probably one of the things that at one point in my career we managed to accomplish was to actually create factory scorecards that worked for all. I think we had 63 factories at that point. And that was the first, this was many years ago, but that was the first foray into data governance with the company that I worked for, was getting 68 factories with 21, 22 different languages, 25 different currencies, all running off of one scorecard. And at that point, that was the only place I'd worked or even talked to people at any of the conferences where someone had put all of that together. And it was painful, but it was extremely useful going forward to run business, to see how the factories were doing.
I mean, I've worked in this area for 25 years and started off, in data quality, right? And more mature you were, it became data governance, right? And programs. And now in the age of AI, data governance is now getting kind of a reset, a refresh, more attention. Once again, master data management is becoming a hot topic. But it's funny to see, like, you were leading edge and you got there because of data governance, and now AI is going to drive more data governance. But the foundation of it all is that trusted single source of the truth, right? And trust is key there too. Kara, any experiences you have? I mean, we're talking a lot about business data fabric or as an architecture. Anything you want to add in terms of what you're seeing as some of our customers doing that is leading edge?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought up the data fabric. And then I'm also glad you said single source of truth, because one of the companies that I was working with, they were, I would say, one of the first companies I saw kind of take this data fabric approach and go from, okay, we're never going to have a single source of truth because we have so many different systems, but we can have a single definition of the truth. And so to me, that really was kind of an eye-opening line, because you're right. We talk about, well, we don't want to have to replicate the data. We don't want to have to move the data. We don't want to have all of these pipelines we have to maintain. So then how are we going to get the data into one place? Because we're never going to operate on a single system. And so now, having this company I was working with started implementing this data fabric architecture, I think it was about 3 or 4 years back, it really was an eye-opening experience to, you can still have that single definition of the truth, that single semantical layer of the truth, without having to physically move the data into places to bring it all together. Because at the end of the day, that's all the companies are looking for, is having that single definition. And this was something, 10 years ago, we were still talking about. We were trying to figure out ways to do it. But now, with a lot of the advancements in the data platform technology, I actually see it coming to fruition with the proper, reliability, scalability, and speed behind it to make it actually usable.
Yeah, and agility, right? That's the key.
Right.
It's not the command and control central governance game. It's yeah, it's got the agility to go along with it, right?
And in this data fabric architecture, I think the word governance gets a little less scary because you're not having to totally give up your system that you use with your data. It can still live where you interact with it daily, but it's still kind of on the overarching governance umbrella to make sure that it is trusted and accurate without losing complete control of it.
Yep, I like that. Okay, so we're gonna kind of start on the wrap up. And so I have a question for both of you. And this is like a very open-ended question, but I just want you to kind of give me the first thing that pops into your head. Because I mean, what is a podcast nowadays without, diving a little bit deeper into AI? Come on. So how does AI change the game in terms of data and analytics? Shelly, your thoughts?
Being a data strategist, I think people have spent a lot of time cleaning up, correcting, moving data around. And I think AI takes a lot of those capabilities away or makes them much riskier. And it goes back to getting the core data correct. Because in AI, you don't get the luxury, quote unquote, of changing data, moving data, making it read a different way. So I think AI is going to re-emphasize data standards, data governance, data controls, and make them a lot more important and meaningful than they have even been before.
Thank you. Okay. Kara, you're up.
You almost took the words right out of my mouth. It comes back to it re-emphasizes the importance of data quality, which of course was always important, but 80-90% was enough because you could use your gut feels. You had your tribal knowledge to know this doesn't look right. Does it pass the smell test? And I used an example, I think it was about 2 years ago when it was first really coming to fruition. I said, if I'm looking online because I need to find a new blazer and AI gives me a recommendation, I go to try to buy it, it's out of stock, right? It gave me inaccurate information. That's okay. But if I'm relying on AI to, look at my demand forecast, look at my in-stock inventory, look at what I have on order, and then go make a purchasing decision for me, that's a whole nother ballgame because that has real financial implications if the information is wrong. And so there's obviously great opportunities that come with AI, but I feel like organizations need to take a step back and say, let's get the foundation right before we go and implement all these new use cases.
Perfect. Well, a huge thank you to you, Shelly and Kara, for sharing your experience and truly valuable insights today. A conversation worth having. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for being a part of the SAP Let's Talk Data community. I hope that today's discussion on the art of data strategy, data governance has given you something meaningful to take back to your work and your teams, or you just enjoyed the conversation. And don't forget to check out the additional resources linked in the description. They're a great way to dive deeper in today's topics. And if you found value in this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Hey, drop us a comment, hit subscribe, and help us grow this conversation. There's a whole library of episodes waiting for you, and we have exciting new ones coming. They're on their way. So until next time, keep exploring, keep innovating, and take care of yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Corrie.
Thank you, Corrie. Thanks, Kara. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Data. If this episode sparked something for you, we want to hear about it. The questions you're asking, the challenges you're navigating, and the work you want to go deeper on. You'll find additional context and resources in the show notes if you want to go deeper. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and stay tuned as we continue exploring how data professionals turn ideas into impact. Thank you for being part of the conversation.